Unique people leading unique lives shape and inform Iowa City. This community is enhanced by these women and men who live in our midst, working, teaching, creating. Welcome to a series of conversations with people who have stories to tell. Join my guests and me, Ellen Buchanan, in a series of interviews called One of a Kind. My guest on One of a Kind is Iowa City's retired pediatrician, Dr. John R. Maxwell. For nearly half a century, Dr. Maxwell cared for thousands and thousands of our children, and that's a lot of sleepless nights. An amazing fact is that in the 48 years he practiced medicine, John never missed a day of work because of illness. Dr. Maxwell, a member of Phi Beta Kappa, graduated from the University of Iowa Medical School in 1947. After interning at Detroit's Harper Hospital, he completed his residency at Detroit's Children's Hospital. In 1950, he opened his medical practice in Iowa City. For over 20 years, he and Dr. Frost were the only pediatricians in private practice. In the spring of 1998, Dr. Maxwell retired, much to the disappointment of his patients and their parents. Born in Whatshire, Iowa in May of 1924, John's father was a general practitioner and his mother a school teacher. He served in the Army Medical Service from 1953 to 56. He was a member of the Johnson County Medical Society, the American Medical Association, and the American Board of Pediatrics. He and his wife, Marion, raised 4 children in Iowa City: Christy, Carol, Paul, and Steve, and they have 7 grandchildren. Welcome to One of a Kind, Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you.
I'm going to call you John.
Okay, thank you.
As I mentioned in the introduction, your father was a family practitioner for 60 years, is
About that, a little over that.
And your mother a school teacher. Did they encourage you to go into medicine, or?
I really didn't recall hearing very much about it. I was interested in it. Actually, I was interested in, when I was a junior in high school, of being a farmer, and then I developed asthma, and I decided that might not be a very good move, and so I kind of drifted into medicine from there.
Drifted into medicine. I'm amazed after seeing your father. He must have missed many meals, must have had a lot of sleepless nights, and here you chose a specialty that had a lot of sleepless nights and missed meals, correct?
Seems like I should have had better sense, doesn't it? Didn't learn very fast.
Tell me, when did you decide that pediatrics, you were into medical school and then you went off to intern. When did you, there must be a story in that.
Well, I was an intern at, I rotated through Children's Hospital from Harper as an intern at Harper, and when I was on one of the wards, my resident got sick. We were paired, resident and intern, and my resident got sick with hepatitis. And my wife was in Davenport at the time, and I didn't have anything else to do, so I worked full-time and got to know the people a lot better. And when I finished, they offered me a residency, and by this time I was interested in pediatrics. I didn't start out that way.
So when you came back to Iowa City in 1950, tell me what was like in the medical scene, especially in private practice at Mercy Hospital.
Well, there were about 40 doctors on the staff, I think, at Mercy. I think there are about 3 times that many now. They were almost all family practitioners. There was a urologist and an orthopedist. There were 2 eye, ear, nose, and throat specialists. There were no internists and no obstetricians at the time. And this is, and all the little towns around had family practitioners, like there were 4 in West Liberty, for example. There was even one down in Hills that I used to see patients for occasionally. 1 in Riverside, 2 in Kelowna, 2 in North English, 2 in Wellman. and lots of them in Washington.
Can you remember some of the names of the general practitioners?
Oh, sure. Dr. Beckman, Dr. Sattler were down in Kelowna. Dr. Miller, two Dr. Millers in North English.
Was Doolin a general practitioner?
No, Dr. Doolin was a surgeon. He was instrumental in getting me here. What happened was that the accreditation people demanded that Mercy Hospital have a specialist in each major field. And Dr. Doolin's mother and father practiced down in Sigourney, and they were good friends of my father's. And my father also was a good friend of Dr. Doolin's here in town. And they knew that I was taking pediatric residency, and Sister Rita contacted me about that, and Dr. Doolin, and we came, saw and liked it, and stayed.
And have you had different locations for your practice, or have you been in one location?
I was in the Paul Helen building at first, from 1950 to 1963, and then I moved over on Market Street in a remodeled house, and I was there the rest of the time. My brother was upstairs, was a dentist, and was upstairs.
Who painted the wonderful watercolor of your office? Was that a gift?
You know, I don't know. That was a gift. Debbie Rogers gave that to me, and it was an artist from Cedar Rapids that painted it from some
Where do you have it
photographs.
now hanging? At
Well,
home?
I have it at home in the living room.
You practiced in Iowa City, like your father, you made house calls. I think that's a lost art. When did you make your most, and when did that kind of diminish?
Well, I started when I first came into practice and made lots and lots of them until I left in '53. And when I came back in '53, there weren't many house calls being made. I made a few after that. But if you remember at the time, maybe you don't, there were a lot of housing units over on the campus, you know, down along the river.
In the barracks?
In the barracks, in Templin
yes.
Park and Fingvine Park. And I often made 2 or 3 house calls at a time. I'd be over there and I'd see 2 or 3 at a time. And I'd make maybe 4 to 6 a day, something like that.
Right down the hill from you, wasn't it?
Right down the hill from me.
When you were out of town, which I don't think it was a lot, was it? Did you travel a lot?
No.
What did you do the few times you were out of town? What did you do with your practice?
Well, Dr. Frost and I practiced for maybe 30 years. I can't remember exactly how long. She and I, actually we started the same day on July 1st in '50. We both finished our residency at the time. She had been in the physical education department at the university before that, before she went to medical school. And although we were never partners, she would take care of my practice when I was out of town, and I took care of hers when she was out of town, and it was a very, very close relationship for many years.
Did you confer on cases?
Right. Yeah, we talked all the time.
And you had, in your practice, you had medical students rotate through. That was really special to you.
Right.
You enjoyed that.
Right. It was kind of before it became popular. There was a Dr. Goshaw who was in the pediatrics department, and he had close relationship with the students, and they'd often come to him to talk to him about going into pediatrics, and he thought it would be nice for them to see what it was really like on the outside, which is quite different than it is at the University Hospital. And so I agreed to take them for a month. They were seniors, and I took them for a month at a time, and I had about 6 of them. I always took them in the winter time. So for many years I had one almost all winter. It was they were very stimulating. It was very interesting, and I enjoyed it a lot.
So they followed you around?
Followed me around, made rounds at the hospital.
Ask questions?
Ask questions. I asked them questions.
Yes, yeah, good teacher. Yeah. Well, you've got to have some cases of yours that are pretty memorable, either being the most difficult or the most rewarding, or both. Looking back.
I remember boy from Solon who had a very severe burn that I had just come. And this was before a burn unit, before anything like this. And I spent a great deal, I had a lot of time on my hands and spent a great deal of time taking care of him. And fortunately, things worked out well, but it was a real struggle for a long period of time. Lots of the things that we used to spend a lot of time with no longer are in existence. For example, when these students would come to tell me, to see me, I would often tell them that you probably see a case of appendicitis while you're here. You see several kids with pneumonia, and you'll probably about a 1 out of 3 chances of seeing a child with meningitis, which is I saw about 2 or 3 a winter, I think, usually. And then, and almost all of them were what's called Haemophilus influenza meningitis. It's a specific bacteria that is prone to cause meningitis in children. And then probably 10 or 12 years ago, I don't really remember how long, we got a vaccine for it. It's called HIB. The patients will remember that. And I haven't seen a single case of it after I started giving immunizations. It just wiped it out. It was tremendous. It was more spectacular almost than, well, it was spectacular just like measles was and polio when it suddenly disappeared.
Well, let's talk about the changes in care for children and what happened in the last 50 years that, besides this, was what you said was so dramatic and rewarding. What else do you think were the really important things that happened in caring for children?
Well, I think by far the biggest is immunizations. We spent a good deal of time taking care of children with measles, and measles was a real bad disease. It's kind of hard to think of that way because everybody had it, but it was still a terrible disease. And I've lost children with measles on several occasions. It wasn't unusual to have that happen.
Was this in the early 50s?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was about 55 maybe or something like that. Measles, I'm not sure when measles vaccine became available, but it just rapidly disappeared so that it's, I was reading the other night, there's just less than 100 in the country, I think, a year now.
Would it be the fever that gets them? Before the vaccine?
They frequently got pneumonia, frequently got bacterial infections as a complication of it. They occasionally got measles encephalitis, which was a devastating disease and unpredictable and didn't seem to have anything to do with how well you took care of them or how well they took care of themselves.
Through all of this practicing, you had a secretary who was and office helper and manager.
Right.
Tell me about this.
Well, Marilyn Rogers started working for me. She'd just been out of high school a little bit, I think. She had worked at the telephone company for a little while. And actually her sister, Lola, had been worked for me for a year, and she was, she and her husband moved away, and she asked me if I thought I'd like to hire her little sister. And so her little sister came and stayed with me for about 40 years.
Now, did she have the track record that you did, that you never missed a day of work because of illness?
She didn't miss many.
I don't remember. How can this be with the germs from children are pretty potent?
I don't know. I think you just get your immunity up and then nothing touches you anymore.
It's amazing. What was the favorite part of practicing pediatrics?
Well, originally, most of my work was really sick kids. Pediatrics has changed tremendously. I used to have a lot of patients in the hospital, and it's kind of become an outpatient specialty, at least as far as general local pediatrics is concerned. It isn't true like at the university. But I think just taking care of serious problems and seeing them resolve, hopefully, was always very satisfying. Satisfying to see young mothers and see how they mature. I mean, often I'd see a mother who was in her late teens maybe, and I would be a little dismayed at her inexperience, and even other mothers who had not had babies before, and see how rapidly they mature and come around, so that they get a little confidence and I get confidence in them, and so forth.
So did you have many, two generations in a family?
I had lots of those.
And three?
Lots of those. I
A
had
few
a few threes. I didn't take care of them as infants, but I took care of the older ones.
How did you keep your records? And you have to keep records for these children for how many years?
Well, it's been changed the last couple of years by the legislature, but I have kept everything till the child is 23 years old, and then I can legally get rid of the charts anyhow.
Where did you keep all these records?
Now?
Yes, where do you?
I have them in my den at home. Yeah.
And are people still calling?
Oh, regularly.
You mean
yeah.
Have I had a tetanus shot, or has?
All right. Well, a lot of them want, I duplicate the records. I keep everything that I want and make copies of everything and then give it to the patient. And if they want it, most of the time it's immunizations and things that are important, unless they've had a serious chronic illness or something that might need to be looked into in the future, why it's not too valuable.
Tell me, have you seen over the years many cases of child abuse in Iowa City?
Right. I've seen quite a few. It's kind of interesting because as I look back, I saw a lot more than I recognized at the time. You know, this was only recognized, I don't remember how many, 20 years ago or something, and people wouldn't believe that children could be abused by their parents, and doctors had a hard time coming to accept that too. And but it's finally become apparent that that was relatively a common problem, and I had several of them.
What did you do with the information?
Well, you're a mandatory reporter, and you have to contact the social welfare people, and they look into it and evaluate it and hopefully come to some conclusion, hopefully solve some of the problems.
Is it? Do you think it's more prevalent now, or is it just that we're more aware of it now?
I think it's just more recognized. I know it's more recognized because it wasn't recognized at all at first, but I don't know whether it's more common or just more recognized. Yeah.
During all of this time that you were at the beginning making house calls and people calling you, parents in the middle of the night frantic, there was your wife by your side. Tell me, how did you meet her, and tell me that story.
Well, we met at the Presbyterian Church at a penny carnival one Saturday night, and her friend, they both lived at Courier, and I had known her friend through the church, and she introduced us, and that was it.
And that was it. And you have 4 children. Tell me where they are, and 7 grandchildren. What are they about? What are they up to?
I have my oldest daughter is Christy, and she's a medical technologist in Portland. And she has 2 sons. Both of them going to be Iowa State students. One of them's in engineering in Iowa State, and the other one's going to be in a couple months. Then Carol is the next one, and she's a novelist, writes children's novels, and lives in Cedar Rapids. She has one son who's graduated from University of Virginia. And I have a son who lives in Manila, the Philippines, and he was in the Peace Corps, and he liked it and has stayed there. He's now in the computer business, has a private business. And he has 2 little boys, and then I have a son who is an optometrist and lives in Dubuque, and he has a daughter and 2 boys.
Are any of these grandchildren, do you think, are showing any signs of maybe following in their grandfather's footsteps?
No.
Can you, or are they
no.
too young yet?
Well, I have one grandson who's starting in pharmaceutical chemistry at the University of Illinois this fall, and I think that's the closest to it. I have a son who's an optometrist, which I said, which is, and my daughter's a medical technologist in Portland.
Well, now
No doctors.
No doctors. Well, not yet, though. Not yet.
Right.
You mentioned your son who is in the computer business, and I know from reading about you that you typed everything manually on a typewriter at your office, but you did have a computer. But now you're becoming very interested and enjoying the computer at home.
I enjoy it now. I knew nothing when I brought it home. My employees used it regularly and all the time, but I didn't know how to turn it on, and I've learned how to turn it on now and do a little email, and I'm trying to learn more about it. I think it's a fantastic thing, but it's a little intimidating at first.
Did your son give you any lessons, the one in the Philippines?
No.
No?
No, he's too far away for
He's
that.
too far away, but you can email him.
Right. Yeah.
Now, since you've retired, you are involved in your avocations, and you are, tell me what you're doing, and plus your involvement with the, as a volunteer at the Free Medical Clinic.
Well, I do a little gardening, and I like woodworking, and I'm trying to increase that. I do a little read more than I was able to read before.
What do you like to read?
I like history.
A certain period in history, or just history?
No, history generally, yeah. Just finished a book on Lewis and Clark, which was very, very good. Enjoyed it.
Does it make you want to go on the trail?
It
follow
does,
his
it
trail?
does. That would be nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And then a couple years ago, Mercy Hospital works on one Wednesday night a month at the free clinic, and I did that for several times. And then when I retired, I started to work more there. I made myself available 3 times a week, but I usually don't work. Only when they have patients, they call me, and I go down and take care of them.
But not children?
Children.
Mostly children?
Just only
All
children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd been at this too long
to move up to not adolescents, but to adults.
Yeah, right.
Tell me about your retirement party. I have some wonderful pictures that we're going to edit into this interview. It looked like quite a time.
It was tremendous. It was on a Sunday afternoon about a year ago, and there were 512 people came, I guess, and a lot of grandmothers and a lot of mothers and a lot of people I vaguely recognized as somebody that I knew a long time ago, and they brought their pictures of their children and their grandchildren. So and it was a tremendous experience. I enjoyed it a lot. A lot of people came.
That's great. So are you looking forward to some traveling?
Well, we're going to, next week, going to Portland to see my grandson graduate from high school. And then I think in a year we're going to New Zealand.
And didn't your wife take your children to each, you didn't go, I don't think, to each state in the Union, did I read?
Oh, I went.
Oh, you went too?
Yeah, we all went.
Oh.
Yeah, we took 2 weeks out in the summer, and I think when my youngest one was 7 and we stopped going to the camp up in Minnesota, and she would map out an area and pick out the highlights, and we'd see that area, and then the next year we'd take another circle. And so we managed to get to all the states, and then since that time we've gone to Alaska and Hawaii. So
a lot of car trips.
A lot of car trips. It was a tremendous experience, especially for the kids. Well, it was for all of us, because I hadn't been to most of it before, but gave them a lot to write about when they had to write a report, or it'd be interesting when you'd read a magazine, you'd look at a picture and see, I was there. That meant a lot to them.
So what is the best part of being retired? Do you think it's no phone calls in the middle of the night, or?
Oh, I got so I didn't mind that too much.
Really?
I didn't mind being on call all the time. It's nice to have time to do things that I didn't have time to do. I didn't do much reading, which non-medical reading, because I always felt a little guilty because there was this stack of journals on my desk that I hadn't gotten to. And but now I have time to do that. So I think that's one of the nice things. And I have more time to spend outside working in the summertime, which I enjoy.
Well, you have a beautiful yard.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for being my guest. It's been a pleasure.
Glad to come.
My guest on One of a Kind has been retired pediatrician Dr. John R. Maxwell. For 48 years, he was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For 48 years, he cared for the children of this community and never missed a day of work due to illness. When he retired in the spring of 1998, an era ended. Dr. Maxwell now has time to devote to his avocations and volunteer at the free medical clinic. When asked about his specialty, pediatrics, Dr. Maxwell said, and I quote, "It's an area where everything usually comes out well, a pleasant specialty almost all of the time, and it's nice to see kids grow up and mature and become responsible adults," end quote. Words used to describe Dr. Maxwell are thorough, caring, dedicated, considerate, kind, and patient. All qualities we would want in a physician. Dr. John R. Maxwell is one of a kind.